Hi everyone, Tim the Plane Man here. Happy holidays and welcome to Plane Time Red Baron Triplane Edition. We are going to take the Dancing Wings Hobby Fokker Triplane S17 that I've been building, and we're going to take everything that I've built so far and we're going to assemble it and we'll put it together and it will look like this. So what I want to do is I'm going to assemble the plane, but without covering it. And there's two reasons for that really. One is because honestly the pictures look pretty cool, and I think it's going to look really nice just to see the fully assembled plane naked, and with all of the framing and everything like that. It will look it already looks pretty nice. And I think it will look actually quite nice to have the plane all together, and so that you can see everything on the inside. The second part is more pragmatic. As you know, I like to figure out things like the electronics and the controls and everything like that before I finish up the build. So what I want to do is actually get everything fully functional with the electronics and controls, so that after I cover it, I know that I'm not going to have to then dig into it and undo something that I've done. One of the most interesting things about this design is the clever use of some carbon fiber rods and carbon fiber tubes, and in particular in how the wings join together. So it also caused some problems, and this is why I'm mentioning it really. What you have here is some carbon fiber tubing, and it's not solid, right? I say it's tubing because it has a hole in the middle, right? And so the larger pieces of carbon tube, let me just pull that up on the plan here. It's clearly described for each one of the wings which particular piece needs to be used, and it's 6mm carbon tube. So that should be 6mm outside diameter, and it's supposed to be a 3mm inside diameter. And then the piece that should go in the middle here that they provide should be 3mm, but it's not. It's slightly bigger than 3mm. Well, let me just measure that. So let me just measure that outside diameter of the piece provided. So that's should be 0. Let's make sure I'm in millimeters. Just tear it. Okay, so the piece provided with the kit is actually 4mm, but it's supposed to be 3mm. Well, it says 3mm, but that's not correct either, because when I found that I couldn't get this piece to fit because it's too big, I happen to have some 3mm carbon fiber of my own. I thought, okay, I'll just get like 3mm carbon fiber and fit it in. Well, it does fit, but it's loose. It kind of flops around in there. It would technically work, but it's not that great. I think what is actually going on is the inside diameter of that hole, I'm pretty sure, is something like, well, it's either 3.5mm or, yeah, maybe it's more like 3.8 or 3.75 or something like that, because what I actually had to do with the other two wing pieces where I've actually got this connected, and they're basically the same. The only difference is how long this piece is here. So and each one is clearly marked on the plan, and this kind of slides in here like that. Then what I actually had to do was well, what I did, I mean, I could file down the outside of this rod, which is the 4mm rod that's provided, which is the right length for this. Or what I did do, which was before I put these pieces into the wing, is I got a round file and filed out the inside of these pieces here before I slid that in there, and they actually slide in quite nicely. So I'm pretty sure that I didn't have to remove 0.5 mm worth of from the inside of that tube I mean, it's hard to tell. I don't have a tool to measure it, so I can't be sure, but my guess is it's probably 3.75 millimeters inside diameter. And so what was really important about that was to file the inside of these tubes out and make sure that they fit before gluing them in here. Once they're glued in to the wings here, it's pretty much going to be impossible to get the inside of that tube to be the right diameter all the way through to the end with any kind of file, no matter how you do it. So this is where I'm a bit challenged with this piece now, because what I had done was I had originally just thought, oh well, I'll use the 3mm tube that I have, that'll be fine, and then I just find that it flops around a bit in there, which is, I mean, it's still okay, it would work, but it would probably be, you know, I get a much nicer fit with these. So what I'm actually going to do is I am going to try and see if I can sort of reasonably evenly file down the outside of this 4mm rod, and I'm going to do that now. I'll go off camera. Once I get it to that point, I'll come back on and I'll tell you what I ended up having to do. So just a little bit thing that you'll need to watch out for with when building it. If you try to put those rods in as they are, it's not going to work. So, or I mean, maybe I was just unlucky and I got some incorrect pieces, but I think that maybe they're being shipped so they're not quite right, and you might need to file that out in order to get them to fit. 3.8mm. So I filed down this 4mm thick tube. It's actually tubed, it's hollow. That doesn't actually matter so much, but what matters is that the tube on the inside here of this 6mm is probably 4mm, and it just needs to be 3.8mm or a tiny 0.2 millimeter to give enough, basically enough flexibility or enough opening for that to feed in there. So a 4mm, they provided 4mm thick tube, and it just doesn't quite squeeze in. And so using a file, I basically just filed down the outside of this tube so that it would fit in here. That's one way you could do it, or you could also do it the way that I did with the others, which was file down the inside with a round file. And I measured it with my gauge. It's pretty much 3.8mm. 3.8mm. So it's very thin, and I mean, you don't have to be absolutely precise about it, but it needs to be basically, you know, round obviously, and the entire length of the tube needs to be brought down to 3.8mm so that this will fit cleanly. And you'll notice now that that wing slides together really nicely, fits together perfectly like that. And one of the things that this clever design does, because of the way that these two larger tubes are actually not directly parallel to the bottom of the wing, they actually kind of go upwards a little bit on each side. When you feed that in through, you end up with, if you can see that, just a slight dihedral on this wing. It's almost imperceptible. You can see it maybe looking a little clearly. I'm not sure how clearly you can see it on the camera there. There is a slight dihedral there that actually comes from how that carbon fiber goes in there, and that provides, even though that's technically going to be a butt joint here that that is supposed to be glued together, that carbon fiber rod there will provide an awful lot of strength, and on top of the fact that this will then slide here into the top of the plane, and basically you know, as you can see, that that's not going anywhere, that's not going to move, that's very stable. So so that's what you needed to know about the carbon fiber rods. I'll just mention one other little thing about them. I found it really helpful to use these diamond textured files that I got rather than a regular metal file. I think you'll find, because carbon fiber is so strong, that it's going to wear down your metal file. So I found that using a diamond file it works really well with carbon fiber. The same as cutting carbon fiber using a diamond blade on a Dremel is a really good way to cut it. Be very careful, but it cuts like butter. So I'll just keep on working on this. I'll get back to you. And here it is. This is the Red Baron Triplane. Dancing Wings Hobby S17 Fokker DR1. I wouldn't want to say fully assembled, but it's all together. It's a little fragile. Some of the things are actually just taped together. It actually looks pretty awesome. I'll see. I'm taking my life in my hands to try and pick it up so I can show you how it looks. I hope you're getting the top view. And there it is. So it actually looks really, really nice. I mean, it's almost like, yeah, you could make a display model out of this just from and you know, polish it up a little bit and put it together and have it on the shelf, and it will look great. But of course I'm going to build it and I'm going to finish it and I'm going to make it fly. So in terms of putting things together, I'll just point out a couple things that I learned on the way that will, you know, that this exercise really helped with. So a couple of simple things. One is the well, these guys, the struts that go on the wings. So it's all going to fall apart now as I pull various pieces apart. So these struts, pieces of aluminium, slide through slots in the middle wing, and there's little holes in the top and bottom wing where they're supposed to fit into. And I had no end of trouble trying to get these into the slots after I put the wings all together. And so what I will do now is, after I take it off, I'm going to actually make sure that the ends here fit into the top slot and the bottom ends here fit into the bottom slot, and I know how they're going to screw together. There's a little because after it's covered, it'll be pretty much impossible to fix that kind of stuff without making a mess. So that's an important lesson about how these things slot together. The second one is the middle struts, the struts in the middle of the plane here, and I had almost as much fun with those as I did with the Sopwith Camel ones. Honestly, they're not quite as much fun. They're a little better, but they're, you know, it's awkward. It's awkward to get these in. And one of the key things, and it's a little difficult to show you right now, but these aluminum struts here in the middle of the plane, I'll try and show you as everything comes apart. Let me just see if I can do this. Okay, so these pieces here, they're they go up, they're bent. There's a bend, a little bend at the bottom end here, and then they're bent over at the end. And the bend at the end here, and the bend at the end of the matching one on this side, they're not the same, especially with the rear one. And so the rear strut here, where it's supposed to screw into the base of what were the, I guess the W21s and the W22s, when building the wing here, there's little screw holes where these struts screw into. Well, they don't actually line up cleanly, so it's a little difficult to figure out how to put it on. And what has to happen is that the strut needs to be screwed onto the wing first, because you're never going to be able to get your screwdriver up from the underneath. There's screws that hold these in, so the wing has to be upside down. You need to screw the struts on, but not tight, because they don't fit because of the bend isn't right, so the screws are actually not going to be, you know, these are not going to be exactly flat. Then it's going to have to be pushed over and pushed into place. The screws here and here and the matching screws at the back need to be put in place. Then these guys will need to be pushed in place to basically level everything out and make sure it's straight before you finally tighten down the screws here. And I would say probably use CA to finally fix these guys at the top, because they'll be actually loose up to that point. There's no way these screws can be screwed down tight, because if they are, the struts will just be sticking in the wrong direction, so that won't work. So that was another little revelation as part of this process. And the other one is the undercarriage, and let me just pull that off and show you that. So it's actually quite a nice little design about how the undercarriage clips in. It's actually really quite nice. So the undercarriage, the front pieces here click into the front of the firewall. There's these little slots at the front of the firewall where that clips into, and then the back end of the undercarriage goes into here. But that's not really the problem. The real problem is how the undercarriage actually fits here onto the wheel. So it's, if you can see that, I'll use the top shot for this one. And you can see that basically the undercarriage just simply forms a V, and the axle, which is another piece of steel, a straight piece of steel, sits on it, which is fine for when it's flying. But when it's landing, which is, you know, actually, I mean, fundamentally what the undercarriage is for, the only thing stopping that from going down is this piece of balsa wood here. It's a fairly thick piece. I think it's probably 2 or 3 millimeters thick. What's that? I don't know. 1/8 maybe. It's 1/8 balsa. It's the same as this one here. The same size as that piece there, and it's the same at the bottom, and that goes over there. But so when if that wheel, like, there's nothing stopping that. The axle itself is, you know, what's going on here is that there's play in there, and then the axle itself is, you know, when there's a wheel there and the wheel bounces on the ground, that's going to just push that axle up, and the only thing stopping that axle from going up is this piece of undercarriage here, basically pushing down against that piece of balsa there. Technically it'll work, but I mean, it's really floppy. Everything else clips together quite nicely. The wing, the bottom wing clicks in. This little nub here clicks into a slot. The middle wing has a similar concept, and the top wing really just flops onto the onto these struts. And so I guess the last little piece that I didn't really work through is the servos for the ailerons. So the servos for the ailerons will sit here on these mounts, and the servo will actually be inside the wing with a, I mean, yeah, I don't really understand that again. Why is that done like that? Because technically that servo mount is built so that it can be easily removed in the case that by screws. You can see the screw holes here, 1, 2, 3, 4. There's screw holes that could be used to remove the servo mount if something happened to the servo. But, well, those screw holes are on the bottom of the wing. So the only way you could remove those servos is to remove the whole wing. Again, I'm not really clear on how that would even work. I mean, you'd have to unscrew these two struts here, and I guess you could. I mean, so if you needed to get at the servos, it's going to be unscrew the struts front and back, and then remove the wing. So that's it. Everything else, I mean, I will say that, you know, just for your information, I've got my flight controller with all the wires inside the plane, and if I try to turn it upside down without everything falling over, falling apart, you might be able to see. So everything is there. I've got my 1500 milliamp hour battery inside. I've got my my wires for the battery. I've got my ESC against the side of the plane. Just, it's really hard to see it, but it's right there on the side. The ESC connects up to the flight controller here. That one wire that you can see running in there is the one wire that I've connected up to the what is my flight controller, which could also just be a standard receiver with a set of servo plugs. And again, it's a little hard to see in there, but there's basically just a set of servo plugs running along the back there. That's actually quite difficult to access because of this cockpit panel over here. It's okay to get to before you put that on, and I can remove that also and show you how that looks, because I just used some sticky tape to tape it in just to give you the look of it, to see how it would look. And as you can see, that folds up, and now you can see inside. You can see the servo wires and everything. In some ways, I'm wondering if I ought to make that actually removable, because it's not really, once that's in place and fixed, if I glue that down, it's really going to be very difficult to get at those. You know, if I need to unplug or plug in a different servo, it's really going to be difficult to get at anything in there unless I take this off. So I kind of have a feeling I'm going to want to try and make that removable. So what next? Well, there's two things. One is that I do have a little bit of work on my electronics. I popped the wire, gonna have to resolder it when I was putting everything together. Probably good that I did it. It probably means it was a cold solder, so it wasn't gonna last anyway. And I'm gonna basically sand everything down now. If you'll notice, you know, I've done a few pieces here. I've sanded the edges, made them nice and round. Some of these pieces are nice, but others, like the wings, etc., they really need to be, you know, the edges need to be rounded off nicely so that I can cover. And so I'll do that. I'm gonna basically, it's almost two things. One is finishing off the electronics, and the other one is finishing off the look and feel, the covering. And it's palpable now. I can feel it coming together. This is a plane that is getting close to being ready for something that can actually fly in the air. So, well, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. I really love how it looks, and I'll be probably rewinding to the beginning of that video just to have a look at it now that I've pulled it apart a little bit. I'm already missing it because it really did look really nice when the whole thing is together. It's a gorgeous looking plane, and it's gonna look just great when it's all finished. This is the continuation of you know, what you and I have done, which is followed CJ of my RC channel, and he got to just before this point, so hopefully I can continue where he left off. And as you can see, putting all of the pieces together that he helped us all to build is in some ways interesting, some ways a bit of a challenge, and but it should all come together into a really nice looking plane. Well, there you have it. That's the plane. It looks awesome. This is going to be a really nice plane, and I'm looking forward to finishing it, so hopefully you'll join me. If you want to see what comes next, subscribe to the channel. I really appreciate subscriptions. Please put comments. I'm happy to answer questions about things that I'm figuring out on the way through. And like the video, like helps my analytics. It's wonderful if you do that. And you can also follow me on Instagram and Facebook. Thanks very much. Tim the Plane Man, over and out.